his YouTube channel, the Swag Wala PM. So today he'll be talking about the topic first 90 days as a product manager. So what do you do in as you start your journey as a product manager? He has worked across diverse industries and is currently the principal PM at Byju's. He's also mentoring, where he's the founder of a community called Does It Product Pre, where he mentors PM aspirants like us and people who are already in product management roles to basically get further in their career. So we request Shravan to start off with the talk.
Awesome. First of all, somehow I want to request every one of you to showcase your faces. I don't want it to be a very monotonous conversation in which I am only speaking and I don't know what's the expression of the audience. Bata do main acha bol raha hu, kharab bol raha hu, bata dena mujhe. Feedback is very important for a PM. Any which ways, yeah. So awesome, guys. Sabse pehle yaar, this topic in general is very interesting, right? And unfortunately, I always wanted to kind of speak about it, but I couldn't get the time because there is so much content that has to be kind of streamlined in the pre-PM stage. Post-PM stage ke bare mein baat bahut kam karte hain log. I don't know why. I think there is where the actual journey kind of starts. But the larger picture, what I want to kind of talk about today is, pehle to ye bata do yaar ki can somebody write in the chat ki how many of you are actually going to join as PMs or APMs or whatever and whatnot? Can somebody just write yes in the chat for me to kind of get a sense of? Okay. यार सभी लोग पीएम बन रहे हैं, बहुत सही बहुत अच्छी बात है ये तो. काफी cool. So if I can just make a brief count, well, at least I see 14-15 odd guys, folks out of 36, 38 in the chat. Okay, fair enough. Even if it's 50%, that's super cool. The way I want to kind of structure this session is that I'll talk about briefly about a topic, that what you should do and what's the insight that I want to kind of put across to you. It's not insight, it's just the repercussions of my mistakes, which I've learned over time. But then again, and then I'll kind of stop and you guys can ask any question that you feel like, but pertaining to that topic, pertaining to what I'm explaining at that point. And towards the end of the session, in the last 15-20 odd minutes, I'll kind of open it up across whatever you want to ask regarding PM. How do you think like a PM? How do you grow in a PM career? Whatever you want to ask, right? So the first thing, I just want to kind of quickly ask you, what is your understanding of the PM role? What do you think is the very, very interesting question that I want to start off with that. What's your understanding? What do you think you will do as a PM? So many of you are kind of clearly joining. Somebody can raise their hand and feel free to ask. There's nothing wrong or right here. I just want to kind of hear your thoughts. Yeah. Anybody can raise hand. Have we given the raise hand function, Dhairya or Yash? Okay, cool. I see Soham has raised the hand. Soham, I started. No, obviously, let's do it the other way around. Today's Women's Day. Let's Karishma give the first chance to Karishma. Karishma, why don't you speak about what do you understand about the PM role? Yeah.
So the textbook definition is that product managers lie at the intersection of business, engineering, and design. Okay. But simply, it's like making sure that whatever is being built is what the customers want.
Got it. So I think very fair point. Textbook definition samajh jao. At the core of it, product managers are just problem solvers. Now, what's the difference between a problem solver and a product manager, right? Aisa nahi hai na ki, a milk shop owner is also a problem solver for you. You don't go early in the morning starting and jab dukaan pe jaate ho bolte ho ki yaar bhaiya aap to product manager ho. Dukandar ko product manager nahi bolte na. So the difference here is that product managers are people who generally solve problems at scale. And they think about systems which can be scaled over time. Now, if you think of any problem in general, right, at the very simplistic or the first principle or the most broken down level, every problem is very simple. It's a statement let me put it this way. Getting milk at the right time, at the right place at an affordable cost was the basically the value prop of your milkman who used to serve it every morning at your house. But the same problem, if you had to do it for 100 million people, right, that becomes a startup called Milk Basket, which got sold for $200 million. The very same problem. There's no difference. The only difference was of scale. As you take it across, then so many variables kind of come across that, or for example, if you take Ola or Uber for an example, right? Ola hai kya? At the very core of it, it's an Excel sheet. Left hand side, there are cars. Right hand side, there are people. You just want to marry them, right? If I want to tell today Karishma or anybody or Dhairya that why don't you do it in an Excel? For all practical purposes, any transportation agency did the very same thing which Ola or Uber is doing. The only difference was that you can do that on an Excel for 1,000 people, 10,000 people. But the moment you make it like 100 million people, then so many variables kind of come into the picture. Like how is the road quality? Is the fuel optimized or not? Is there enough supply? Is there a union that is stopping people to give their cars? Or are there enough tolls which kind of increase the pricing or whatever and whatnot, right? So most PMs, we start looking at problems in a way that how do you solve that problem at scale? And that is where it becomes ambiguous. Because you don't know a certain variable might come in. Like, for example, people might not want to go in an Ola if women's safety is not taken into account. But probably in a fleet of like 10 cars, you won't care about it because you would just call the driver and figure out that where he is, where he's not, right? That is something that you can figure out. But at a scale of 100 million people, you cannot call every person to figure out whether the person sitting in the car is safe or not, right? So ambiguity becomes a very central structure in the life of a PM, that you have to be comfortable with ambiguous situations and then try to make them from abstract to non-abstract or executional solutions, execution based. Now, how do you do that? Generally, when there is a problem, when you start looking at any system or any solution that is built for you, right? If it's a simple system, you know the path. Like if you want to buy something, you know that you can just run out of your house, you can follow a certain path and you can reach there, right? Or to a shop, right? But once there is ambiguity, then more and more ingestion of ideas actually allows you to identify those variables which are hidden, which you're not thinking about. You might think that there's a certain equation that these three things I solve, my problem is solved at scale. Like Ola started thinking, okay, if we solve the problem of demand, if we solve the problem of supply, if we solve the problem of pricing according to the road quality, I think we are done. That's where it is. But they never thought that there will be incidents related to safety and they will have to build safety related features, which they couldn't think when they started the company, when they figured out that this is something. So that is the reason a product manager kind of consistently stays close to the user, because as many users you talk to, you get different personas, different expectations, right? Which you want to incorporate in the primary solution equation that you're building. So this comes to my first point, right? Most PMs, when they join the company, right, somehow have this notion that you have to learn tools. Like you have to learn UX, you have to learn data analytics, you have to learn ML, you have to learn this, that, you have to learn Jira, you have to learn CleverTap as a product analytics tool. But tools are a means to an end. The value of a skill is only when you know that the skill is applicable to a problem. If you're not even aware of the problem, right, then what's the value of that skill? It has no meaning, right? So the first thing that once you go into the company, don't make this mistake of thinking that I need to learn skills in order to become a better PM. Skills are important, like UI UX, it is important, but it should emanate from a problem that you want to understand. Like the problem need should dictate, like for example, you understood that this user journey is bad. Like somebody coming on my website is not converting. You understood that it's somehow bad. Then you realize, okay, one of the reasons for it can be design. And since I need to know what is good design, I need to learn UX. I need to learn UX, and UX, that is why it's important. For example, if you want to figure out who are the next set of people who would eventually register, right? Then you understand, okay, I need to figure out what's the rate of growth of a particular performance indicator or a particular metric. So I need to understand how to use SQL to get the right set of data and figure it out. So the first thing that you need to do, at least in the first 30 days, is just go inside and try to spend as much time with the core user, the end user, and don't invest too much time in thinking that I want to learn ML, tools, wireframing, etc. You will learn it with time. That happens. That is not the priority. The priority is to understand the user journey of a user, that what is the typical expectation of an end user who comes on my product? What is the value that he or she is trying to find? And what is the eventual, are we doing justice to the value that we are telling the user that this is what we'll provide you for a particular cost? And that can only happen when you start talking to your end users and get their feedback. Sense, why did they come to the product? Why didn't they go to any other competitor? Why do they feel this is the right service? What are the pros? What are the cons? So start by spending as much time with the end users. Maybe once you join the company, if it's a B2C company, I'll make both examples, right? If it's a B2C company, just go to your hiring manager and say that I want to just do like 200 calls or probably 20 calls a day. I just want to talk to end consumers, whatever it is, and I'll just get feedback. And most user interviews, don't try to push your thoughts. The one attribute of a good PM is humility, the ability to listen, right? It can be good, it can be bad. Feedbacks, both are equally important for the product. So just listen to the end consumer and just note it down. That this is what I've understood. You don't have to marry that, what there's an insight out of it, but just so that after 30 days, if I can ask Dharya tomorrow, Dharya, who is my end persona? Who is my end user? Can you define that end user? So Dharya should be able to tell me, yes, my end user is a middle-aged man from 30 to 40. Their expectation, their per capita income is this, their paying structure is this is how they think about. So that you have a very good clarity of that, who am I building this feature or this product for, right? So that then what will happen is any feature that comes to you, you will tie that to that persona. Does it fit to the persona that I'm building for? For example, if Dharya and me tomorrow are working in a company and we want to build insurance for, let's assume, railways. Like one of the problems that I have faced at least is that whenever I used to go to the railway station or ticket karane ki koshish karta tha, kabhi hoti nahi. I used to end up paying, and in the end, I always got it a wait list. Somehow I had a miserable time over there. So one day I was just thinking about it, and I was thinking, can there be a model in which if I have to pay 50 rupees more, right? And you can insure my ticket. And in case I'm not able to get the ticket, you'll just give me a flight ticket or whatever and whatnot. Now it's a typical insurance model. 98% of the people will actually get their tickets if they do it at the right time. The remaining portion, it's a very lucrative value proposition for any person, like who is spending 600 bucks, 50 rupees extra de dega, right? So, but if I try to tomorrow build a feature that can he insure a Lamborghini service, it's not going to work because that's not the persona, right? So the first insight or the first thing that I want to kind of cover is, please don't spend time on learning tools. Learning tools is a part of the process. It will happen slowly and steadily. You will invest time to, it is just a way to de-operationalize a PM. That if I know how to use a particular tool, I will not spend like 50 minutes doing my data analysis in an Excel. I'll probably do it in 10 minutes. But that's not the point. Your saving of 40 minutes is only valuable when you know that you're spending it at a valuable place. Right? And that can only happen is when you can start talking to your end customers, when you understand what's the persona and get a sense of the entire user journey. Where do users come from? Why do they come? Why is this product relevant to them? Why are they not going to any other competitor? What is our fundamental advantage as a business than the other business? And what are the pros and cons they're looking in the product? So that's the first part. I hope this is clear. If this is clear, give me a yes in the chat. Awesome. Awesome. Cool. So if you have any questions, I'll just stop here, and probably if you want to ask a question, feel free. Yeah. Yeah. Karishma, do you have a question? Okay, fair enough. Go ahead. Yeah.
Most of us would be starting off as an APM. What if the PM that we're working under is like, does not encourage us to go speak to the customers, or is this just not agreeing to this idea? So how to convince them?
Then you made a poor choice joining a company. Then that's the point is, any PM would not benefit if you are not empathizing with your end customer. It doesn't make sense. You have to listen. You are not someone, like most people make this mistake that there's an inherent bias in a PM that what I build is something what users will want, right? It doesn't work. 99% of the cases, it doesn't work that way. It never works that way. So this is a hiring decision. Like whenever, most times you join a company or whenever you will join a company, the decision should be made on learning per minute should be far more than dollars per minute. If learning per minute, and how does learning per minute happen? When there are people who can ask hard questions and respond and tell that even if it's a hard question, I would allow you to figure it out. The whole principle of a PM role is that it should account to autonomy and accountability. Autonomy is only given to people when there is accountability. Right? Like मैं कल धैर्य को बोलूंगा, धैर्य एक event sponsor कर दे यार, मेरे design कर दे. मैं तभी बोलूंगा उसको. I'll say it only when I know that I will give him autonomy, but he is accountable. that after 7 days, if I go to him, he will not say, yaar, maine kuch kiya nahi. It doesn't work that way, right? So it is imperative that whenever you're joining, you should know your end customer. There can be one scenario or two scenarios in which maybe it's a regulatory, it's a banking product. You can't talk to the client, which may very well happen. Then what you do, then even at that point, then you speak to people who are closest to the end customer, which is salespeople, which is operations people, right? Which are customer support people, right? Then you have conversations with them. But your role fundamentally is to stay very close to your end customer. If at any point of time you're not doing that, slowly and steadily you will lose relevance of how the product is structuring or how the market is changing. One of the very bad qualities while you scale in your PM career is that your feedback loops become weaker with time. Like, I am a director of product tomorrow. I won't talk to like, मैं कहाँ end customer से बात करूँगा, APM कर लेगा यार, वो मेरे को feedback दे दे. It doesn't work that way. It's super poor if you think that way. Rather, you should understand that feedback loops have to become far more stronger because your ambiguity structures are becoming like, as an APM, they will tell you design this feature. As a PM, they'll tell you take care of this product. It becomes slightly more ambiguous. As an SPM, they will take care of this product line. As a PPM, they will take care of this business itself. And probably as a director or as a VP, they would say, which business would you want to start now to give me $100 million more? So you see the ambiguity is increasing, and the only way to reduce ambiguity is that you're closer to your end customer. You're just very close to them. You understand what they want and you build pillars on top of it. Is this clear to you guys? Can I move on? Or somebody else has a question? Awesome. Second thing, I think, which is very critical, is that a lot of times when we go into this PMing structure, we have somehow this inherent bias that we are bosses. Somehow everybody listens to us, which is true. They have to listen to us for sure. But there's an attitudinal part. The attitude of listening should come from understanding and empathy, not from directives. That I am giving you a directive, I am a product manager, I have to design this feature, मैं business को जाके बता दूंगा, भाई तुम्हें बनाना है. ऐसे नहीं होता. I'll tell you why. When you join the company, probably in the first 30-35 days, just speak to the people who have been in the system far longer than you have. And what is your responsibility is not to counter them. Most APMs, in order to make impact initially, say that हम यार 25 आइडिया लेके आ जाएंगे टेबल पे, बोलेंगे यार ये आइडिया बहुत अच्छे हैं, ये करो, और you will become like, I have brought some innovative idea on the table. Right? That's because you are scared about the fact in the next 90 days, I have to create an impact. I have to figure it out. I have to be in the good eyes of people. But the truth is, a PM is a collaborative role. Never make this mistake that you will take, अरे यार ये तो क्या ही काम कर रहे हो यार तुम, मतलब you have done इससे तो अच्छा, this is the better solution. Don't you think they as a business understand that? Are they not smart people there? Right? So the principle that you have to understand is that you have to build trust by showcasing trust, by believing in their ability, and change comes at a certain rate. Like a simple example I'll tell you. अगर आपको जिम जाना होता है, for example, if tomorrow somebody starts thinking, like Yash starts thinking or Sakshi starts thinking, मेरे को जिम जाना है, and Sakshi wants to become like a supermodel, for example, let's assume ABCD, right? There are two ways to do it. One way is कि she will go in the morning, she'll work out for 8 hours and say आज ही मैं सब कर दूंगी, सब जो होगा आज ही कर दूंगी, ऐसा ही होगा, ऐसे ही कर दूंगी मैं. और दूसरा है कि you're consistent, you're doing 15 minutes or 30 minutes every day. So after 6 months, you will genuinely see the results on the second side, because the effect of compounding is far more relevant. It happens. It's like a hockey stick curve. So what you have to do is, while you're speaking to the customers, spend the first 35-40 days just talking to colleagues. 30 minutes, even if it's like an organization which is pushing you to perform faster, maybe take the first 30 days. Nobody questions you for the first 1 month. एक महीने के लिए कोई कुछ नहीं बोलता यार. मतलब अगर कोई company कर रही है ना, then they are clearly not understanding the role of a PM. But first, for the first 30 days, and what is the part? The part is you have to let them speak more and tell them that how is their experience as a PM, right? Not as a PM, or as an engineering manager, as a designer, as a colleague PM, whatever it is, right? So that they will tell you how the system works. What are the intricacies of the system? Like, the reason that I'm telling you is, unless and until you know the flaws of the system well, how can you suggest improvements? So you need to understand, you need to think of them also as your end customer. And one very core principle that has stayed very close to my heart is that sometimes the best way to gain control is to give control. It's a very powerful statement. Sometimes the best way to gain control is to give control. The reason is, put the person at the center of the conversation, make the other person comfortable, and just listen and note, right? It will do two things for you. One, it will break the barrier that this is a new person in the system, and you will build relationships faster. And people will try to. Second, it will make them believe, unlike other PMs, this person listens. He hears, he values my feedback, right? That's the second good thing. Now, first, you are talking to the end customers. Second, you're talking to your peers. You're letting them speak. You're respecting them. You're giving them enough value. You're keeping your ideas in check rather than listening to their thoughts, and giving consistent amount of time over there, right? Once these two things are done, right, then we typically move to the third part of the conversation. And what is the third part? And then after the third part, I'll stop again. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask, right? Another mistake that PMs generally make is, which is, मैं बहुत गलतियां किया हूं लाइफ में, तो इसीलिए is that I start setting up one-on-ones with everyone. कि आज तो मैं इसके साथ एक one-on-one कर लूंगा, आज तो मैं उसके साथ एक one-on-one कर लूंगा, और सबके साथ मैं अगले 10 दिन में I will do 20 one-on-ones, and somehow I will understand the product. When a person who is actually working in a system, right, has too many tasks on their head, and the person is coming out for a 45-minute one-on-one, वो one-on-one कभी रहती नहीं, उसमें merit ही खत्म हो जाता है, because the person wants to just give you basic context, like, because think of it like this, like you are building a house, and अचानक से बिल्डिंग घर के बाहर से एक बंदा आता है कि यार, can you tell me where is the next possible sweet shop? Completely out of context. Because the person is already at a sprint cycle, as a release cycle, and then the person will give you some very random, straightforward stuff. हमारी कंपनी ये करती है, हमारी कंपनी में ये होता है, हमारी कंपनी में ये 3 चीजें होती हैं, और वो information Google पे भी available होगी, more often than not. So it's a waste of your time for all practical purposes, right? Unless and until the person is like a VP or something like that, which has limited time, and you want to get that time, set those one-on-ones, and there is nothing wrong in setting one-on-one. But the faster way to learn would be just ask your hiring manager कि यार मुझे एक product में फेंक दो, कोई भी एक feature दे दो मेरे को, मैं figure out कर लूँ, I'll figure it out, right? While you are in the product, right, you will have to understand what are the requirements for that feature. You will have to understand who is the designer there. You will have to talk to them, and you will have to process information a lot more faster. And they will be able to give you pertinent feedback. Like, this is not, the PRD is not right. What is wrong with the PRD? You will be directed to the right person. And in that hustle of 15 days that you'll figure out in some additional task that you're doing, you will learn far more faster than doing one-on-ones. You will do, and it's hard. I'm telling you, it's like you can sit in a car and learn to drive in a backyard and consistently do that and try to figure out that once I go in a highway, I will be the best rider. Or you actually go on the highway and figure it out, right? So that's the point that I'm trying to consistently put out. So there is nothing wrong in doing a one-on-one. You can do them. You can try to just tell your manager, whosoever it is, that, yeah, is there some project in which you need help? I don't need a new feature. I don't need anything. It's my first time role. Just put me in that project and I will figure it out. I'll understand. And there the context will be a lot more clearer. People will be able to give you pertinent feedback. And rather than asking something कि ये product शुरू कब हुआ था, फिर उसकी कहानी क्या थी, फिर हमने क्या बनाया. And unfortunate part in most of Indian product organizations where culture is not given a lot of importance, is the problem is that documentation always takes a back seat. So most early stage PMs, they go, yeah, where is the documentation? Where is the documentation? What PRD should I read now to understand the context? That PRD might not be even relevant after 30 days. And whatever you're reading might not be even be in development or be not be even part of the product. So unless and until you're joining a company like Google or Microsoft, where documentation is probably giving some amount of precedence, but I have friends over there also, वहाँ पे भी बहुत अच्छा काम नहीं होता. But in general, Indian startups में तो भूल जाओ. Like if you want to kind of really figure out कि documentation will help you gain that structure of information, no, it's not. Documentation in context to the work that you're doing might help. might help. Like you have put forward in a small feature, you want to figure out that what was the thought process. You probably will be directed to the right document which they are developing right now, which they're figuring, and then you will get some sense of it. But if you think that there's a repository which I'll follow and I'll read all through it and I will get again some magical sense of the product, it won't. 99% it won't. 1% audience मैं मान लेता हूँ कि बहुत guru audience है तो समझ जाएगी. So I'll stop here. Guys, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Yeah. Yeah, yaar. Okay. Karishma is quite, she's asking questions. I want all of you guys to, यार क्या या तो मैं बोर कर रहा हूँ, अगर मैं बोर कर रहा हूँ तो चिल करते हैं, तो एकदम तो फिर कुछ और ही बात करते हैं, मूवीज की बात कर लेते हैं, या अगर मैं बोर नहीं कर रहा हूँ तो यार फिर सवाल पूछ ही लो. या करिश्मा again.
So sorry again, but you said that not to keep one-on-ones, but then how do we talk to customers and how do we talk to our colleagues if we are not setting up one-on-ones with them?
I never said not set one-on-ones. I would say that the rather faster process would be that you ask your manager, can I be part of some ongoing sprint? Can I some way, maybe I'll add some value, but it is way more faster because you are collaborating with the people who are currently doing something. And at that point, you will better understand their processes of development. What do they look for? What are the thought process when they develop a product, right? Rather than doing a one-on-one, because in most one-on-one, the questions generally come like, okay, can you give me a context about the product? And the person will give you some random old age context, which was not even relevant, which kind of got deprecated 8 months back. Right? So my point is, do one-on-ones. If you want to, if you have time, feel free to do it. But the faster way to truly learn and get, and again, citing the point that talk to your customers, while you're talking to a product, while you're taking a feature into account, at that point, it will become imperative for you to talk to customers, because then only you would be able to suggest any recommendations of making an improvement in the feature. So it kind of will tie back, right? Again, so that's why I'm saying for customers के लिए तो तुम्हें one-on-one नहीं करना पड़ेगा यार, उनको phone करके ही बात करनी पड़ेगी. मैं तुम्हें बोल रहा हूँ within the company. Instead of just figuring out that I want to speak to 10 odd colleagues, who are the 3 designers, who are the 2 back-end engineers, who are the 2 front-end engineers, who is the engineering manager, and I will spend time equally with all of them, just go into the battle and just figure it out, right? Just spend 15 odd days part of the sprint. You will make mistakes, but it's great. Make mistakes, right? You'll build your own structures, right? And an organization which is not really, like, I would genuinely say that the culture of making mistakes should be fostered, because there is this interesting thing. I don't know how many of you have heard of the Socratic method. कहीं तो सुना होगा यार, IIM में पढ़ते हो यार तुम सब लोग, इतना तो मतलब like किताबें तो पढ़ते ही होंगे, मैं for general बोल रहा हूँ. How many of you have heard of the Socratic method? See, I am not as educated, honestly speaking. मैं तो खुद ही किताबों से पढ़ने की कोशिश किया हूँ, मैं generally. So Socratic method is a way that Socrates, the philosopher, he always used to say, I don't have answers, but I can consistently ask questions. And while I'm asking questions, if somebody gives me a hypothesis and I make a counter question to that hypothesis, and the person is not able to defend that question, that means the hypothesis is weak. And I consistently keep doing it till I reach a point where most of my questions are solved. Right? And then that is the principalic hypothesis, that this will not change. That is the culture that has to be fostered in a good company, in a good product company. Right? Because one mistake by you, see the stakes, right? A coder or a programmer makes a mistake in the code, फट जाएगा product, release वापस लिया जा सकता है. यही होगा. Worst case यही होगा. You will take it back, the product will be offline for 3 days or 4 days or 5 days or 10 days. It's a 10-day recurring cost. But if the hypothesis is wrong, your entire development of 2 months, 3 months, plus your go-to market, once you go into the market, that's how people appreciate. So you probably, for you, it might be a PM job. For a founder, it's his life. It's the experiment of his life. If he makes the wrong bets, you might move to a different company. Uski company bankrupt ho jayegi bhai. If you're joining an early stage company. So your stakes are far more higher, right? So the culture of making mistakes has to be fostered. If you don't do that, you will never be able to, like in Baiju, when we were making products, like the synchronous learning product, which I take care of, like I literally failed at like 10 models. Like I studied a 1-on-1 model, then 1-on-20 model, then 1-on-25 model, then teacher to secondary teacher to 20 model. Pata nahi kya bana ke we eventually move to a point where we figured out that this is product market fit, right? So that is the second part. Sorry, the third part that I wanted to talk about. So this is clear to you guys till now? Awesome. Cool. Okay, Sakshi, next I will allow you, but let me just cover one more point and then probably we. So I think the fourth point that I want to kind of tell you is in the first 90 days, after you have done this exercise and you have some sense of the business, you have started understanding that how the business works, probably after 30, 35 days, start by asking your hiring manager, can you give me some small features to ship? If you so deliver 2-3 wins in the first 90 days, they might be small wins. Very small wins. Like there is a product that has been, koi aisa feature hai jo stalled hai. It's not working out. You figure that out and how do we ship that across, right? Now, why is it important to deliver 2-3 wins, right? The reason is most developers put an effort based on the hypothesis you bring as a product manager, right? If your hypothesis is wrong, what would the development team feel? Ki yaar, maine to yaar 3 mahine effort mara, feature banaya, end mein feature chala hi nahi. Who did the poor job? The PM did the poor job. They didn't do a poor job. They actually built what you wanted them to build, right? So the point is that if you start with small wins, it starts building trust in the development team, in the design team, that this person has clearly thought what he's bringing on the table, right? Once that happens, right, people will start. And second thing that you have to always understand is make them feel that you're not dictating terms. They're not working for you. They're working with you. That's something that there's a very stark difference, right? PMs are storytellers. As simple as that. Achhi kahani sunani aati hai, to tum acha kaam kara sakte ho. It's as simple as that, right? So make them feel you're working with them. A lot of times what you also have to take into account is whatever you bring to them, right? Listen to them. Like a lot of times kya hota hai ki when you will join as APMs and your manager will say, yaar ye 2 din mein khatam karna hai, kisi bhi haal mein. तो तुम्हारी ऐसी तैसी हो जाएगी. मतलब you will be like, oh my god, what is happening? I have to finish it by 2 days. You will be panicked, like, oh my god, नहीं करना है यार. My manager wants to see the report on Friday. If your developer, the person who has spent considerable amount of time in the system, says it won't affect things, believe. Don't think. So there is this interesting thought process which I kind of talk about, which is called second order thinking. What is second order thinking? First order thinking hoti hai how your decisions affect you. Second order thinking hoti hai how your decisions affect others. Right? Now, if you did somebody, like for example, you wanted to ship a feature, your manager says, no, this is important. And unfortunately, everything is important in a PM's world. Somehow, I don't understand how that happens, but somehow everything is important. But so, if your manager says it's important and you consistently push the developer, nahi yaar, ye karna hai aaj. We have to finish this. We have to finish this. The only thing it will do is that the feature will not make any impact. Any which way, it's not going to work that way. But you will ruin your reputation with the dev team. They will not want to talk to you. You're not their manager. Their manager is the engineering manager. Their appraisal is not dependent on what you say. Probably has some influence, maybe 10-15% influence, but they would rather not care. Right? On the contrary, if you take a feature, think very well, go and have a discussion with the dev team. Take their feedback. And if they say that you have not thought something well, you take that as a feedback, go back, do your research again, come back with the right point. They will appreciate it. They will say, nahi yaar, maine isko baat batai. He understood. The person understood and he has come up with a better proposal or a better prioritization structure. Right? If you do that thing, it will start building trust. It will start telling them that he's compassionate, that if I'm telling you that this feature can't be shipped in like 20 days, it can't be, right? And he has come up with some structure in which he has taken into account that I want to ship something in 20 days. I will remove some scope in the feature. Most PMs do this mistake. They say, nahi yaar, karna hai to kaise bhi karna hai, come on Saturdays. Never do that. Rather, you reduce your scope. It is never possible for you as a product manager to come up with a structure of a feature which can't be better prioritized. There is always going to be waste effort in anything you develop. Anything, however good you are. So that's why you can reduce the scope. It will build empathy. Now, once you've released the feature, you've done that, what it will always also do for you is that if you typically listen to their needs, now they'll feel you are battling for them. You are not fighting against them. And in that scenario, if genuinely tomorrow you need at 12 o'clock at night and you call your developer, he will actually pick up the call, or she will actually pick up the call and actually develop things for you in that scenario, but not the other way around. So the imperative part in the first 90 days, deliver 2-3 small wins, like take small features. You don't have to take big features, but after 2-3 wins and building that rapport, then you can kind of jump to your first big product or feature or whatever you want to develop, because now it has built confidence in the dev team, in the business team. Everybody now has understood. They have some sense of your skill set, some sense of your value that you brought across, right? Again, I'll stop here. Any questions, feel free to ask. Yeah. Yeah, Sakshi, go ahead.
Hi, Shravan. So based on my experience as an ST, what I observed was that engineers and the dev team is brought in at a much later point after the entire PRD is ready. They just give us the PRD. They don't necessarily even explain us why that particular feature is being built. All they would expect in return is just what are the design changes and what is the timeline within which you could implement these changes. And I feel that I had a lack of understanding of the product because of all of this. And so I wanted to ask, at what stage is it right to involve the dev team in the PRD creation? And
I think even before you discuss the PRD or the requirements, I think there has to be like a first gel up call or pre handshake kind of a meeting, right? In which you tell that, why am I building something? Why does it make sense? Right? And unfortunately, it happens. I'm not saying it's just the mistake of a PM. The problem is it has become like there is something that is called the product thinking gap. PMs reside in the why space. Devs reside in the how space. They are builders. This is a thinker. There's a thinker, there's a builder. Now there's a gap in between, right? A builder would only start thinking कि यार मुझे तो बनाना है. मेरे को ये क्यों पूछना है कि क्यों बनाना है? Why do I have to build it, right? That's why the developers with very good product mindset are very rare. And I've put in posts about it on LinkedIn. Developers who have a very good product mindset are super rare. So that they ask, ideally the dev team has to ask questions कि क्यों बनाना भाई, क्या हो जाएगा इससे बना के, बताओ तो सही, explain तो करो, right? And PM की भी उतनी ही responsibility है. So a PM's, one of the superpowers of a PM is over communication. You have to communicate. The reason is because it's like affirmations. I am happy करते हैं ना, साधु बोलते रहते हैं ना कि खुद को बोलते रहो तुम खुशी हो जाओगे, right? That's actually true. If you consistently over communicate that this is the culture I want to build, then people start expecting that thing from you, right? So it is ideal that once you've come up with some sort of a concept document or the designs are in shape, right? You know that 60-70% of the work is done, right? Not 100%. Just set up a pre-handshake meeting with the engineering manager and the few important folks. You don't have to bring the entire 30 people dev team. That's their job to kind of explain it across. But at least the few important people who can give you feedback that this is not right. This is something that I want you to think about from an engineering standpoint. And you give them that context. So kya hoga ki they will be very mindful of the fact that the PM came and he actually asked for feedback. And now the person is asking for feedback. They will be mindful to communicate this to their peers. यार कि अगर कुछ नहीं लग रहा है ना पीआरडी में चेंज कर दो, बंदा चेंज करके ले आएगा, कोई दिक्कत नहीं. On the contrary, if you go to them after you have frozen the PRD and done everything, उसके बाद जाओगे बोलोगे यार now we have to finish this in this sprint. They'll say, oh man, like we have not even thought, we have not read the PRD, we don't even know anything, right? So this is like a cultural bias that somehow, that's why I consistently keep telling that the role is very misunderstood. It's very misunderstood. How people perceive that role, product management is a very people first role. People should, like, I just want to tell you this one interesting thing as a PM, skills are only going to take you this far. Like you become an SPM, you become a GPM, theek hai, khatam. Uske baad it's your attitude that's going to take you across to places on becoming a leader and etc. And after a certain point of time in your PM life, right, what will happen is that the success of other people is actually going to define your success. Whether they are feeling comfortable in your presence, right? So the point that I'm trying to put across is, at any point of time, deliver that 2-3 wins, communicate, over communicate, tell that fight's important. Actually, they should feel that you're fighting for the dev team, fighting for the design team, and fighting for, at the very core of it, you're only fighting for the end user. You're not fighting for anybody else, right? So if you do that, then this will genuinely develop respect, a lot of respect for you, a lot of admiration for your work, right? They will not say the typical say यार करता क्या है यार, कुछ नहीं करता, लिखता है तो PRD, हम काम तो हम करते हैं. That is the typical notion that happens, right? They will genuinely understand that you are a thinker. Your point is to bring insights on the table, which is the hard part, right? So that is something that you have to do. Okay. Last thing that I just want to be very clear to you is in terms of prioritization, right? Always try to make yourself very accessible as a person, very accessible, right? The reason is that most of the times, somehow, this is also a very poor notion. PMs seem to think that they're very busy. They have like 20 meetings to attend in a day, which is so bad, which is bad at so many levels, right? You are not respecting your own time, which is of the most value for you to develop a good product, right? So start saying no. कि ये नहीं है important थी, मैं कर सकता, if this can be done on an email, I will do it on an email, as simple as that. I don't have to be a face in every conversation. Your work should speak for you. You shouldn't, your presence in a meeting doesn't speak for you, right? So accessibility, and you can only develop accessibility, true accessibility, is that when you have time and you can actually go at a place where people want your help, genuinely need your help. But if you consistently start thinking, यार दिन में ये मीटिंग भी अटेंड करनी है, ये मीटिंग भी अटेंड करनी है, ये स्क्रम भी अटेंड करनी है, फिर ये इस बड़े आदमी के साथ मीटिंग करनी है, फिर ये करना है, फिर वो करना है, and I attend like do 20 meetings in a day, two things happen. One, you let go of your own productivity. Your mind is screwed, right? That's one. The second thing is you're not accessible. People will say, यार कि इससे बात करने का फायदा ही नहीं है, ये तो इसको तो 4 दिन तक टाइम ही नहीं मिलता, ऐसा क्या काम कर रहा है? What are you doing like that, right? So accessibility can only be developed, right, when you have a control in your own life. Optimize for the time that you have to spend. See, one of the things that you have to realize as a product manager is, I again said this, learning per minute has to be far greater than dollars per minute. Learning per minute can only happen. How do you learn fast? At a principalic level, you'll only learn fast when you're with the right peer group. You are a function of your experiences, the time that you spend with people. Whenever you join a job, right, the point is not about the brand of the company or the product or whatever and whatnot. Whenever you are making a choice, the choice should be made on who you are going to spend your most time with. Like, for example, if there is a company where there is no fostering of innovation, there is no culture in which people are promoted and promoted to ask questions, and that is the person I have to spend 8 hours every day of my life for the next 2 years, till the time I'm working. What do you think will be the health of my own brain after like 8 months, 9 months? I'll start believing in that. कि यार कि यही होता है. And that's why these biases about I need a tech background to become a PM, I need a certain kind of structure, pedigree to become a PM. ऐसा कुछ नहीं है यार. It is still simple funda. You are a function of the people you are surrounded by. So choose your time. If you choose to spend time with the right people, right things are going to happen to you. So that is where prioritization. So prioritization सिर्फ features की नहीं होती. Prioritization अपने time की भी होती. Where do I want to invest my time? So if you do that, then at that point of time, you will be able to come up with creative solutions where people will respect your time. People will start thinking. So the typical journey that you have to think about as a product person, right, is that you are dispensable at first. अगर एक कंपनी, फॉर सिंपल एग्जांपल, अगर एक कंपनी से कल को ओला से पूरी प्रोडक्ट टीम फायर हो जाती है, तुम्हें क्या लगता है बिजनेस बंद हो जाएगा? It will not. Nothing is going to happen. Probably metric ऊपर 1-2% हो जाएगा और कुछ नहीं होगा. But why are they needed then? If a certain team gets away from the entire business और कुछ नहीं हुआ business को, तो चाहिए क्यों? The reason is you become from dispensable to indispensable. And you're indispensable because people value your word. if you come with the right insights, that this is the product that you should build. This is the inference that I have, qualitative inference that this is what I want to build, right? Once you become indispensable, is that when you are admired in the company, when people respect, they will take initiatives on your thought process. After that, what has happened? After you become indispensable, you have to become dispensable again, which is very weird. It's paradoxical. I just said you have to become dispensable, say indispensable. Ab main bol raha indispensable se wapas dispensable banna. Kyun? Why? The reason is, you as a product leader, when you will grow in a business, like move from a PM to an SPM, SPM to a GPM or a PPM or a director or whatever you want, what you becoming, right? You can't do everything. You cannot be the bottleneck. One of your roles as a PM, as a APM or a PM, slowly and steadily, is to foster a culture of bringing the right people in, right? Then if I become a director tomorrow, my role is that can I bring people like Shravan or somebody else or Dharya or whosoever who is a smart person according to me, and they can take accountability of those things, and I become free again. Then I can think horizontally again and start thinking, ab mujhe next kya banana hai? Ab mujhe next kya karna hai? So there's a difference between A culture and A plus culture. In A culture, you follow a leader who is a general, that is. But if the general dies, the army dies. It's in disarray. But A plus culture is where the general very clearly knows that I have to be out of the system somewhere, so I will create 5 more generals, right? And I will do something interesting on top of it. Last thing before I kind of want to close this, ek aur galti mat karna, that's the last mistake, is that don't just read about product management. कि पूरा दिन सिर्फ product management की ही किताबें पढ़ते रहोगे यार कि इसमें ये framework सिखाया अब मैं इसको लगाऊंगा यार. It never happens. You are becoming unidimensional by design. Most of my learning in product management has come from movies, games, religion, music, mathematics. And that's why I could build so many experiences and give you relatable examples, right? So spend 50% of your time following whosoever your popular product leaders are. Marty Gagan को follow करना है, किसी को follow करना है, जिसने भी बहुत कुछ मचा दिया है, right? But 50% of the time, read anything that interests you. Anything, any damn thing, it doesn't matter. Recently, I was reading more about women's menstrual health. I just got curious about it, just started reading about it. It's a massive market. I just wanted to read about it. And it gave me so much perspective about healthcare products, how they are built, what are their sizing, right? So spend 50% of your time doing that, right? So I think 5 points I've covered. Stay close to your user, end user. Second, be the voice of your colleagues. Sometimes the best way to gain control is to give control. Third, try to be part of a feature process, then doing one-on-ones. You can balance it out how you think about it, but I generally recommend that. Fourth, deliver 2-3 wins in the first 90 days. Like that is very important, and that will help you build trust. Fifth, that become accessible. Don't waste your time. Hold time as more important than, think of like this, like you spending 1 hour is like spending like $100. Start thinking on those lines. So you will value it more. I think that's the larger picture. This is where I want to stop, and you guys feel free to open any questions. Yeah. Awesome. Yes, Animesh. Go ahead, man.
Hello, Shravan. Hi.
Hey, man.
I wanted to ask about your experience at Byju's. Actually, I'll also be interning at Byju's as product intern this summer.
Correct.
So it might help me.
यार मतलब in general तो देखो यार, I think most of the decisions that you have to kind of think about is, most people somehow make mistakes that they think of things at a very top level, how culture works. Ideally, it is really dependent on the team that you're joining or the team that you will join, right? What are the people like there, right? Like, I'll give you a very simple example. There's a large set of people who say Amazon is good and some people say Amazon is bad. It's a very shitty place, right? People say that, but ideally it's not Amazon, it's a shitty place. It's the team that you're going in. It's good or bad, right? So it really depends on the team. But I think if you're given a choice, right, look at 3 things. Probably the first thing that you want to think about is, who am I going to work with? How the person is. And while you're having a conversation, please ask hard questions. I don't know why people are scared to ask hard questions. उनको ऐसा लगता है यार मेरी internship छूट जाएगी, तो क्या हो गया यार? So what? It's not the end of the world. If people are afraid to answer hard questions, वो अच्छा PM कैसे बन सकता है? It is impossible, right? So ask hard questions. What kind of people do you hire? What are my expectations? What kind of culture do you want to foster in the team? ये चीजें पूछो. That's the first thing. The second thing that you have to ask is, do you really like the product? Are you really passionate about the product that you're building about, right? It's like simple सी example है यार कि किसी को cooking अच्छी लगती है, वो cooking इसलिए नहीं करता क्योंकि लोग तारीफ कर देंगे, बोलेंगे अरे यार तुमने तो बहुत अच्छा खाना बना दिया सर. मेरे को cooking करना अच्छा लगता है. I like it. Right? For example, if you have spent considerable amount of time in the hardware industry and somebody has a parent and who is working in the person knows ins and out of the industry. So he knows what are the pros, what are the cons, and the person can be very passionate about it. How do you build a system around it? So are you really interested in the problem? And the third thing that I genuinely would want that you should keep into account is that is the entire team close to the end user? Are they close? Are they understanding ki I have to be, and that culture is fostered. One, who are the people? Second, is the problem really exciting to you? Third, how close their feedback mechanism is. Ye teen cheezein agar tumne align kar li, to I think that's a better choice. That's a better way of evaluating where you're working. Then evaluating that how, when a company becomes of 100,000 people or like 50,000 people, तो क्या culture decide करोगे यार, मतलब in retrospect to joining a team of like 10 people or something. I hope I answered your question. Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, Yash, go ahead, man.
So Shravan, usually in big tech companies, there is already a culture of product thinking. They give the first 2-3 months to explore and learn. But in early stage startups where they don't necessarily have a culture, it is still in process. All of the points that you mentioned, do they necessarily change in an early stage startup or at a place where essentially there is no culture of product thinking?
यार ऐसा नहीं होता. मतलब I think what is product thinking at the core of it? It is just about staying close to your end user and understanding your problem well. Like even in early stage startups, like for example, let me give you a very, very good example. Akshay Kothari was the head of product at LinkedIn and he was the country manager of LinkedIn India. He started Notion. If I would have given you an option to start Notion at a seed stage and you knew that Akshay Kothari is starting the business and you had that option, would you have not jumped the ship? So it's dependent on the people. The culture is made by people. The culture is not made by the scale of the company. It's just, are the right people sitting at the right places? That's as simple as that. So you make your bets with the person you want to spend time with, and the person spending the time in a company is a reflection of the culture. Like for example, if you come to my team, not मैं कोई अपनी तारीफ नहीं कर रहा, but मेरी team में बहुत लोग खुश हैं. They're like super happy. They're super chilled. उनको मजा आता है. They enjoy the fact that even though I don't do most of the work, like most of the work is done by peers, the PMs, but they consciously want to do it. उनको मजा आता है. That's the culture that I wanted to foster. I wanted to build that kind of culture, right? That may not be the same in any other version of section of Baiju or section of any other startup. It really depends. The primary determinant of a culture of a company is the founder philosophy. What's the founder philosophy? What does the founder think is going to be the critical pillar for the growth of the business? Right? If that is clear, I think that is the primary determinant of how the culture is brought into account. So it is not dependent on small stage or early stage. हाँ, processes हो सकती हैं. बड़ी कंपनी में उन्होंने processes बना रखी हैं जिसमें you can gel well, and in an early stage startup, those processes might not exist. But then again, like if you're interested in the problem, it won't really matter. Like you will figure it out. Hustle is a part of a PM's life यार. मतलब वो करना ही पड़ता है. मतलब मैं generally, the reason I didn't join Google like was the very same reason कि somehow I'm not a guy who wants to live like 4 months to ship out a certain feature and just sit there and do things around it. Awesome.
All right.
Cool. Any other question, guys?
I have a question.
Yeah, Dharya, go ahead.
So Shravan, as you said that we need to talk to our users and we need to listen to them what they're speaking around. But most of our thoughts are usually, so when we hear something from a user, we instead think of one feature based on what we have developed in the past, what we have basically implemented in the past, and our brain gets hinged to that particular kind of feature. And then when we are talking to our users, that kind of flows in our communication, or that kind of basically impacts the kind of decision that we're making. So it won't be very broad. Our thought process won't be very broad, but will be basically hinged to that particular thing that we have thought in the very first interaction with our users. So how do we overcome that?
See, honestly, the thing is that you have to understand that there's this concept called the problem space and the solution space, right? Where do you want to reside? Problem space में solutions नहीं होते यार, needs होती. Do you understand needs of the user, right? So you need ke liye tum clear ho. Like for example, you're working as a PM at Make My Trip, for example, right? And you want to figure out, can I build a better pricing algorithm, whatever and whatnot, whatever that problem is, right? So I think the need is to give them affordable prices. That's the need. The solution is not there, right? So whenever you do a user interview, you don't put across solutions. You just give up, you make the user understand the need, and then probably take your product and say that use the product. Do whatever you want to do with the product. If they're not even able to use your feature, then clearly it's your mistake, not theirs. So most of the user interviews have to be very open-ended, like very, very open-ended. And that's where you get the best kind of insights, right? You don't have to tell them, like if they tell you that this feature is not good for me, or I wanted this, or I wanted that, that's an insight for you, right? But it is not that you will go and tell them like, why don't you use this feature, or how did you like this feature? It doesn't work that way. You focus on the needs and say that I built something, why don't you just use it? Give me some sense of it, right? So that is where you will get a lot of clutter also there, but at least you will get genuine insight also there. But if you're already confirming the end user to a certain kind of thinking, then you you never had the opportunity to think what exactly the person is thinking. So user interviews are the only place where you don't have to do this. I feel your pain. User interviews में नहीं किया जाता. वहां पे उनको अगर कोई दिक्कत हो रही है तो होने दो. You want authentic feedback. You don't want to confirm your own biases. My feature is good. My feature is really good. Yeah. Awesome. So we can take one last question if there is one more. Yeah, Saad. Go ahead, man.
Yeah. Hi. So my question is for someone who's joining a firm for internship, and internship is generally for 2-3 months. So what are the expectations from the interns? Because when you intern in, let's say, a firm or you might be put into a large project or a mid-sized project, and there are already many PMs working there. Okay. So what would be expected of you from the intern point of view? Because we're just starting into that industry, we have no idea of how things have worked.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my question.
I think it's very simple, yaar. It's the expectation is for you to effectively optimize their processes, make them faster in shipping, right? And give insights over there, right? So the process is that you understand, it's the same philosophy. For the first 30 days, if you understand the customers, you would be able to give them insights, the PM's insights that you're not thinking on a particular aspect of the product. And once that consistently starts happening, right? People start appreciating your thought process. They understand that this is, so eventually they should feel that you're an asset in the 3 months. You as an asset help them ship a feature faster, or build a more robust hypothesis, or build a better design, or whatever you did. But somehow you aided the success of a particular initiative or a solution that you kind of brought across. If that mindset comes into their head, that is the expectation from the company, then more often than not you're poised for a role in the future. That's one. That's their expectation. Your expectation should be कि 3 महीने में मेरे को धंधा समझ में आ जाए यार, मेरे को समझ में आ जाए कि क्या valuable है, क्या valuable नहीं है. What I have to focus on. And dhanda is again a very derogatory term. That's not how I put it. But I should understand the pillars of the business. What are the pillars? What are the things that we truly need to focus on? And that can never happen just by reading literature. That can only happen when you consistently be part of the process of the system, because developing a solution is not just a function of what users want. It's also a function of how fast you are. It's also a function of what kind of people are there. It's also a function of what kind of design are you making, because there are n number of variables, right? So you have to understand the culture, the internal dynamics and the external dynamics, both, and then make a choice. Do I want to stay in this company or not? Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Cool, guys.
Thanks, Shravan. On behalf of the Product Management Technology Club of IIM Calcutta, thank you for taking out time and imparting such great knowledge to all of us. I'm sure that all of us took something from this talk, and we'll be able to apply that probably next month during our jobs and internships. So thank you so much.
Anytime, guys. I think super lovely to meet you. But yaar, matlab PMs ban rahe ho to thoda extrovert ho jao. That's all. Chill maro life mein, ekdam hi. Koi scene nahi. Matlab, as last thing that I want to kind of keep you with this, dekho yaar, it's a fun job. If it's a stressful thing for you, don't do it. Any job that's stressful for you, don't do it. It's as simple as that. You should really enjoy that ki yaar main kuch naya seekh raha hu. Every day I'm learning something, right? And I really want to wake up and feel like that I want to do this job. right? So that will only happen is when you have, like, I genuinely feel that one of the things that I really want any PM to have in their life is a sense of humor. Is that something? Because that really builds that kind of collaboration, that structure around things. So as long as you enjoy your job, you'll do a great job. You'll do a great, it will be one of the best places, one of the best roles to learn, right? So that's what I want to kind of leave you with. But thank you very much for calling me, guys. It was super pleasure talking to you. Yeah. Awesome.